Hello, my wonderful and beautiful friends. Welcome back to our favorite place, entitled people, where people truly believe they can do no wrong and that they are the center of the universe. In this episode? Oh, it's going to be hilarious. We've got entitled Karens who think they're above the law and one OP who shares how their family completely outplayed a particularly nasty Karen family. I hope you enjoy these stories, just don't shake your head too hard. And as always, you can send or link your posts to this email right here. Now, let's dive in. Alright. Story 1, Drama. Landlord harasses me because I refuse to take care of her dog. First up, we're heading to our entitled people, where your kindness can sometimes be twisted into an excuse for ridiculous demands. This time, OP shares a rental drama that had me yelling, "Mrs. L, are you out of your mind?" OP is just a regular person who recently moved into a small rental home with a backyard, the kind of place with a white picket fence, a little vegetable patch, and a quiet space to unwind after work. OP writes, "I moved here because I needed an affordable place to live." The lease was clear, $700 a month, and nowhere did it mention taking care of pets. The main antagonist of this drama? Mrs. L, the landlord. OP describes her as around 50 years old, always wearing loud floral shirts, and owning a massive Labrador named Max. OP writes, "She lives 2 houses away, but you'd think she was my next-door neighbor with how much she tries to control everything." At first, OP thought Mrs. L was just a typical landlord, collecting rent, fixing plumbing when needed, but no. She entered OP's life with a demand so absurd that I can only call it the peak of entitlement. Are you ready? Brace yourself, because Mrs. L wasn't just intrusive, she escalated the drama to ridiculous levels. It all started within OP's first week of moving in. OP writes, "I was watering my vegetable garden when Mrs. L showed up with Max, who immediately trampled my tomato plants. She laughed and said, 'Max likes you. From now on, you'll help me take care of him.' OP was stunned. Take care of him? I don't like dogs, and that's not in my lease." Mrs. L just shrugged and said, "Well, you live here now, so you have to help. Max needs you." OP politely refused, "Sorry, but I don't want to. He's your dog, you take care of him." OP thought that was the end of it. But nope, that was just the beginning. Meanwhile, I was sitting here screaming, "Mrs. L, your dog, your responsibility. Who has time to babysit for free?" But Mrs. L wasn't ready to take no for an answer. OP writes, "The next day, I came home from work and found Max tied to a tree in my yard with a note, 'Take care of Max tonight, I'm busy.' I was furious. I called Mrs. L and demanded she take her dog back. Her response? 'You're being so irresponsible. If you live here, you have to help.' OP dragged Max back to her house and left him on her porch, but she refused to open the door. Left with no other option, OP had to keep Max in their yard overnight. OP writes, "He barked all night, and I was losing my mind. Meanwhile, I was shaking my head like, 'Mrs. L, the only irresponsible one here is you.'" But the drama didn't stop there. Mrs. L escalated her harassment. OP writes, "She kept texting me non-stop, 'You're so cruel to Max, Max is sad because of you.' She even stood outside my fence yelling, 'You have to love him.' I locked my gate, closed my curtains, but she took it to the next level. She started throwing Max over my fence every day. And if that wasn't enough, she knocked on my door at midnight saying, 'Max misses you.'" OP writes, "I couldn't sleep, my yard was covered in dog fur, and Mrs. L was turning into a full-on stalker." But the breaking point? One day, OP came home from work to find Max inside their house. Mrs. L had opened a window and let him in. The sofa was shredded, and the floor was covered in pee. OP says, "I lost it. I screamed, 'Enough,' and called the cops." And at this point, I was applauding like, "Finally, OP. You should have done this sooner." When the police arrived, OP explained, "Mrs. L has been harassing me and keeps forcing her dog on me." Mrs. L started crying, "I just wanted them to love Max." The police checked OP's lease and warned her, if you don't stop, you'll be fined. And just like that, Mrs. L shut up, and Max never showed up again. OP writes, seeing my yard clean again felt like paradise. Meanwhile, I was just sitting there smugly like, Mrs. L, if you love your dog so much, take care of him yourself. Can you even handle this level of entitlement? OP later wrote, after that incident, I installed security cameras in case Mrs. L tried anything again. The Reddit comments exploded. Team OP said, Mrs. L is completely unhinged, forcing a tenant to care for her dog is insane. OP did the right thing. Team Mrs. L, however, said, she's just lonely, OP should have helped a little. And then there were the jokers who said, next time, OP should toss Max into her house while she's sleeping, let's see how she likes it. I was laughing so hard, but I'm fully on OP's side. Mrs. L, your dog is not OP's problem. Now, I have a theory for you all. Do you think Mrs. L was just trying to get OP to care for Max, or was she actually trying to make OP a replacement caretaker? Like, maybe she's lazy and wanted to dump all the responsibility onto OP? Or maybe she was genuinely lonely and saw that Max liked OP, so she tried to force a connection? Either way, OP handled it perfectly, never backed down, called the police, and shut it down hard. But I do wonder, if Mrs. L had sincerely apologized, would OP have forgiven her? One last update from OP, a few weeks later, Mrs. L texted, you were so mean to Max, but I forgive you. Want to take care of him now? OP instantly blocked her, writing, she learned nothing. And I was just sitting there thinking, Mrs. L, forgive what? You were the one in the wrong. What do you think? Was OP too harsh, or was Mrs. L completely out of line? Have you ever dealt with a landlord like this? And there you have it. Another entitled drama that had me laughing and shaking my head at the same time. A landlord who tried to force her tenant into dog sitting and ended up getting the police involved. Who could have seen that coming? Are you Team OP or Team Mrs. L? And do you have any crazy rental stories of your own? Drop them in the comments, I'm dying to hear them. Story 2, Humorous, I don't understand this level of entitlement at the airport. Next, we dive into our /entitled people, where airports sometimes turn into a stage for self-proclaimed VIPs. This time, OP shares a drama at the check-in counter that had me shouting, Mrs. M, having a child isn't a magic key to everything. OP is an airport employee, the kind who wears a neat uniform, has a name tag, and keeps a professional smile despite long, exhausting days. OP writes, I've worked here for 5 years, dealt with all kinds of passengers, but no one has ever made me both angry and amused like this woman. The main character of this drama is Mrs. M, a mother whom OP describes as about 30 years old, pushing a stroller, dressed in sportswear, and possessing a voice that could drown out airport announcements. OP recalls, the airport was packed that day, with hundreds of people queuing up like a long snake, all eager to board their flights and either head home or go on vacation. OP initially assumed Mrs. M was just another passenger, perhaps needing assistance due to her child, but no, she had come to turn the entire airport into her personal stage, with entitlement so absurd that I can only call it peak delusion. Are you ready for this? Brace yourselves, because Mrs. M is about to make you laugh and shake your head in disbelief. The drama began at the check-in counter on a busy weekend afternoon. OP writes, I was processing tickets for a family when Mrs. M suddenly pushed her stroller forward, cutting the line, let me board first. OP looked up to see the baby peacefully sleeping in the stroller and asked, do you have a priority boarding pass? Mrs. M snapped, I don't need a pass. I have a child, so I must board first. OP checked the policy and politely responded, I'm sorry, but without a priority pass, you'll need to queue up, just like everyone else. The line starts back there. Mrs. M crossed her arms and shouted, don't you people understand? I'm a mother. I deserve to board first. OP writes, her voice echoed across the counter, and suddenly, 100 heads turned to watch. Meanwhile, I just wanted to yell, Mrs. M, having a child does not make you a VIP. Things escalated quickly as Mrs. M refused to queue. OP continues, I told her again, please line up, everyone here is waiting their turn." Instead, Mrs. M shoved her stroller further into the crowd and yelled, "I'm not queuing. I have a child. You all must give me priority." OP adds, the other passengers were getting annoyed. One older man muttered, "Everyone has kids, what makes her special?" Mrs. M heard this, spun around, and pointed at him, "Shut up. You don't know how exhausting it is to be a mother." OP tried to maintain order, "Ma'am, please calm down. No one can board early without the proper ticket." But Mrs. M wasn't done. She even pushed her stroller into an elderly lady's legs, nearly knocking her over. "I'm just sitting here thinking, Mrs. M, if you're tired, take a break, don't start a riot." OP finally took action to end the chaos. "I called security on the radio, we have a disruptive passenger at counter 5. Mrs. M overheard and screamed even louder, "You're calling security? You people hate children. I'm going to sue." Security arrived, 2 tall guards, and asked, "What's going on?" OP explained, "This passenger doesn't have priority boarding but is cutting the line and causing a disturbance." Mrs. M started fake crying, "I just want to board. You people are so heartless." But security wasn't buying it. They escorted Mrs. M and her stroller out of the queue and into the waiting area. OP writes, "She cursed all the way, but the entire check-in counter erupted into applause as she disappeared. And I was just sitting here like, Mrs. M, actions have consequences." The story ended with a hilarious final twist. OP shares, "Later, I heard from a coworker at the boarding gate that Mrs. M was still making a fuss, demanding that an employee push her stroller for her, but she got rejected." OP adds, "Eventually, she boarded, her face dark with embarrassment. And I couldn't stop laughing, Mrs. M, entitlement won't get you early boarding. Doesn't this whole thing sound ridiculous?" OP followed up, "Afterward, I told my coworkers, and everyone said they deal with passengers like this all the time." The Reddit comments exploded. Team OP, Mrs. M was way too entitled. Having a child doesn't mean you can cut the line. OP handled it perfectly. Team Mrs. M, come on, she was probably exhausted. OP could have been a bit more flexible. And then there were the trolls. Next time, OP should issue priority passes written on toilet paper, just for Mrs. M. I was cracking up, but I'm definitely on OP's side. Mrs. M, airports have rules, don't expect special treatment. Here's a thought for you, do you think Mrs. M genuinely needed early boarding, or was she just trying to assert dominance? Maybe she had been given priority somewhere before and thought every airport should cater to her? Either way, OP handled it flawlessly, ensuring fairness and preventing Mrs. M from steamrolling others. But I do wonder, if she had sincerely apologized later, would OP have let it slide? One final update from OP, a few days later, a regular passenger told me, "I saw that same mom on another flight, she tried cutting the line again but got sent straight to the back." OP writes, "I laughed, I knew she wouldn't change. And I'm here thinking, Mrs. M, if you don't learn, you only have yourself to blame." What do you think? Was OP right, or was Mrs. M just a struggling mom? Have you ever encountered an entitled passenger at the airport? And there you have it. Another entitled drama that left me both satisfied and in stitches. A mom throws a tantrum at the airport demanding priority boarding, only to get escorted away by security. Classic. So, are you Team OP or Team Mrs. M? Do you have your own airport drama to share? Drop a comment, I'm all ears. Story 3, satisfying update, the guy who got dumped demands a new girlfriend. Next up, we have a story from r/EntitledPeople, where some people think that breaking up is an opportunity to make the most ridiculous demands. This time, OP brings us an update to a drama that had me screaming, take care of your own life. OP isn't the main character but is recounting the story of E, OP's best friend, and E's ex-boyfriend. OP writes, "I shared this story a year ago, and now there's a new update. It's too crazy not to share." The drama began with E and R's broken relationship. OP explains, E and R dated for 2 years, but they broke up because R was lazy and did nothing but play video games. After getting dumped, R didn't let go. He demanded that E find him a new girlfriend. OP writes, E is a strong, independent woman, living in her cozy apartment with her cat and a stable job, while R is just a grown-up man-child. This is a story about a sense of entitlement that lasted over a year, with an ending that made me want to applaud. Ready? Buckle up, because R doesn't know when to stop. The drama kicked off immediately after E dumped R over a year ago. OP recounts, E told R, "We're not right for each other. Let's end this." R agreed, but a few days later, he texted, "Find me a new girlfriend. I'm lonely." E was baffled and replied, "No, find one yourself." R snapped, "You dumped me, so you have to help me. That's your responsibility." OP writes, E told me about it, and we both laughed. What responsibility? He got himself dumped. I wanted to scream, R, breakups mean you're on your own. Who has time to find you a girlfriend? But the drama didn't stop there. R started making a scene. OP continues, he texted her every day, "You know my type, just find one for me." E blocked his number, but R got a new one and messaged her on social media. He even got mutual friends involved. E, help R, he's really sad. E patiently explained, I don't owe him anything. But R didn't listen. He went public, posting, "My ex dumped me and won't help me find a new girlfriend." How cruel. OP writes, E saw the post and was furious, but she didn't reply, just blocked him again. I was thinking, R, you just exposed yourself as desperate. The drama escalated in the 1-year update. OP explains, E is now happy with her new boyfriend, T, a kind, responsible guy with a good job. But R still wouldn't let go. He texted, "You found a new boyfriend. Why won't you find one for me? You're so selfish." E blocked him everywhere, but then R showed up at her apartment, knocking on her door, "Open up. We need to talk." E called the police, and R got a warning, "Stop harassing her." OP writes, he stood outside, crying, "I just want help," then left. I was thrilled. R, harass people and you face the consequences. The final resolution was beyond satisfying. OP reports, a mutual friend said R now lives a lonely, isolated life, still blaming E. Meanwhile, E and T just went on a vacation together, happier than ever. OP writes, seeing E smile makes me believe in karma. Entitled people bring misery upon themselves. I clapped. E, living well is the best revenge. Don't you think this passive revenge is just perfect? OP reflects, every time we mention R, E and I laugh, but we also feel a little sorry for him. The Reddit comments exploded. One side, the Team E crowd, said, R's beyond entitled. Expecting an ex to find him a girlfriend is insane. E handled it perfectly. The Team R side argued, come on, he was lonely. E could have just introduced him to someone and been done with it. Some even joked, next time, E should send her a doll and say, here's your new girlfriend. I laughed so hard but firmly stood by E. R, take care of yourself. Stop relying on others. Now, I have a theory for you all. Could it be that R didn't actually want a new girlfriend, but was just trying to maintain a connection with E? Maybe he just couldn't accept being dumped and kept making demands to drag out the drama? Or maybe R was just that lazy, thinking E should still do everything for him, just like when they were dating? Either way, I think he handled this flawlessly. Cutting him off completely and living her best life was the ultimate win. But I do wonder, if R genuinely changed, would he ever forgive him? Here's one last update from OP. A few months later, R messaged a mutual friend, E ruined my life. I'll never forgive her. But no one cared, and he just said, let him be. I thought, R, you ruined your own life. What do you think? Was he right, or is R just a pitiful guy? Have you ever dealt with an entitled ex like this? And that's it. OP's story is another entitled drama that left me both satisfied and impressed. An ex-boyfriend demanding a new girlfriend after being dumped, only to end up alone. Who saw that coming? Are you Team E or Team R? Got any breakup drama of your own? Drop a comment, I'm all ears. Story 4, Drama. My parents live luxuriously while neglecting me financially. Finally, we arrive at our entitled people, where sometimes, family is the biggest source of drama. This time, OP shares a story about their parents that made me want to scream, Mr. and Mrs. P, what kind of parenting is this? OP is a college student, the kind who lives in a cramped dorm, survives on instant noodles to save money, and works part-time to afford tuition. OP writes, I'm 20, in my second year of university, trying my best to study hard for a better future. The main characters of this drama are OP's parents, let's call them Mr. and Mrs. P, whom OP describes as living like rich people, always traveling, buying luxury goods, but treating me like a stranger. OP shares, they have a big house, fancy cars, and a bank account full of money, but they've never properly supported me. OP assumed their parents would help with college expenses like many families do, but no, Mr. and Mrs. P turned their relationship into an entitled spectacle I can only describe as peak irresponsibility. Are you ready? Brace yourself, because this story will make you both angry and sympathetic toward OP. OP recalls, I asked my parents for help with tuition, about $5,000 per semester, since my part-time job earnings weren't enough. Mr. P laughed, you're an adult now, earn it yourself. Mrs. P added, back in our day, we were independent, you should be too. OP writes, I was in shock because they had just returned from a luxury vacation in Hawaii, posting bikini and cocktail pictures online. OP accepted their refusal, took out student loans, and started working 20 hours a week as a server just to get by. I ate instant noodles for a whole month while they posted photos of their fancy restaurant meals, OP shares. Meanwhile, I was screaming, Mr. and Mrs. P, your child is eating instant noodles while you're sipping cocktails? OP recounts, during summer break, I asked for $200 to buy textbooks, but Mr. P said, I just bought your mother a $1,000 handbag, so there's no extra money. OP writes, I stood there, looking at the Louis Vuitton bag on the table, and just wanted to cry. It didn't stop there, Mrs. P proudly announced, we're going on a European vacation soon. Be good while we're gone. OP then messaged, my laptop is broken, I need money to fix it for school. Mr. P's response? Sell some of your stuff, we're busy packing. OP says, I blocked their messages and decided to handle everything alone. And I thought, Mr. and Mrs. P, living lavishly while neglecting your child? That's just cruel. OP shares, last month, I had a bike accident, broke my arm, and needed $500 for medical bills. I called my mom, Mom, I need money urgently. Mrs. P coldly replied, figure it out yourself, we just bought a new leather sofa. OP writes, I had to borrow from a friend and pay them back slowly, while my parents posted pictures of their shiny new couch. That was the last straw. OP decided to cut them off. I sent one final message, from now on, I don't need parents anymore, and blocked them all. OP continues, they called a few times afterward, but I didn't answer. If independence is what they wanted, then I'd do it for real. And I was cheering, OP, you're stronger than they ever expected. OP updates, now, I'm working 2 jobs, paying off my debts little by little, and still doing well in school. Meanwhile, their friends say Mr. and Mrs. P have been asking, where's our child, but no one answers them. OP concludes, seeing them live their luxurious life while I no longer care just makes me laugh, I don't need them anymore. And I applauded, OP, becoming independent is the biggest slap in the face for Mr. and Mrs. P. Do you think OP's self-reliance is the ultimate comeback? The first group, Team OP, said, Mr. and Mrs. P are beyond entitled. Living in luxury while their child struggles to survive? OP is absolutely right to cut them off. The second group, teen parents, argued, maybe they were just trying to teach OP independence. OP should be more understanding. Someone even joked, next time, OP should send them a bill for instant noodles as family tax. I was laughing but firmly on OP's side, Mr. and Mrs. P, independence doesn't mean abandoning your child. I have a theory for you all to consider. Do you think Mr. and Mrs. P don't even realize they're wrong? Maybe they grew up struggling and think not helping their child is a form of tough love? Or are they simply selfish, prioritizing their own comfort while treating OP as a burden? Either way, I think OP's response was brilliant, thriving despite adversity and proving they don't need irresponsible parents. But I do wonder, if Mr. and Mrs. P genuinely apologized and changed, would OP forgive them? Let me share an extra update from OP. Recently, Mr. P messaged through a mutual friend, "How are you? We miss you." OP didn't reply, simply saying, "If you really missed me, you wouldn't have let me eat instant noodles." And I thought, Mr. and Mrs. P, now it's too late for regrets. What do you think? Was OP too harsh, or are Mr. and Mrs. P truly at fault? Have you ever been neglected by family like this? Parents who live lavishly while abandoning their child financially, only to end up cut off. Who would have seen that coming? Are you on OP's side or their parents? Got any family drama stories to share? Drop them in the comments, I'm dying to hear them. Story 5, Humorous, kicking out a drunk customer. This time, it's even crazier. Next, we return to our entitled people, where an ordinary workday can turn into a circus just because of one drunk customer. This time, OP shares a barbershop drama that made me want to shout, "D, if you're drunk, just go home and sleep." OP is a barber at a small shop, the kind with old round mirrors, tiled floors, and the faint scent of cheap shampoo lingering in the air. OP writes, "I work here to make a living, not to babysit drunk people, but this guy made me want to switch careers." The star of this drama is D, a customer OP describes as a big guy, wearing a torn t-shirt, stumbling like he's about to fall, and reeking of alcohol strong enough to intoxicate the whole shop. OP recalls, "I had just finished cutting a kid's hair, and the shop was peaceful when this guy stormed in like a hurricane. Last time I covered a similar story, I focused on the chaos inside the shop, but this time, I'll dive deep into D's entitlement and how OP turned him into a joke before kicking him out. Ready? Buckle up, because D isn't just drunk, he's crazier than you'd expect." The drama begins when D bursts through the door, almost shattering the glass. OP writes, "He yelled, 'Cut my hair, now!' I could smell the alcohol from 5 meters away, so I told him, 'You're drunk, go home.' D staggered and pointed his finger, 'I'm not drunk. I'm a customer, you have to cut my hair.' OP adds, the other customers in the shop, an elderly lady and 2 older gentlemen, turned to stare, and the lady even covered her nose. OP remained calm, 'We don't serve drunk customers. Please leave.' But D shouted even louder, 'I'm paying, I'm the king, cut my hair now.' OP writes, he pulled out his wallet and threw a $10 bill on the floor like I was his servant. At that moment, I just wanted to yell, 'D, $10 won't buy you sobriety.' The situation escalates as D makes a fool of himself. OP recounts, 'I told him, pick up your money and leave.' He bent down to grab it but was so drunk he tumbled into a waiting chair, flipping it over. OP writes, the whole shop burst into laughter, and the old lady even clapped, 'Serves you right.' D scrambled to his feet, yelling, 'You dare laugh at me? I'm handsome, I have rights.' OP stayed unfazed, 'If you're handsome but drunk, just leave.' Furious, D lunged forward, grabbed a pair of scissors from OP's hands, and waved them around, 'I'll cut my own hair.' OP says, he swung the scissors like a swordsman, nearly stabbing the mirror. I snatched them back and shouted, 'Give me that.' I was laughing so hard at this point. D, are you cutting your hair or the mirror? OP decides to handle the chaos in the funniest way possible. OP recalls, I said, "All right, you want a haircut? Sit down." D sat, but OP grabbed the clippers and pretended to turn them on. "How about a full shave?" D panicked and jumped out of the chair. "You wouldn't dare." OP grinned, "If you're drunk, don't test me." D slammed his hands on the table. "I'll sue you. I'll destroy this place." OP called security. "We have a drunk customer here." The security guard arrived, but D kept shouting, "I'm a customer. You can't kick me out." But security grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out. OP writes, he tripped and face-planted on the sidewalk. I almost took a picture. At that moment, I cheered, D, 'cause chaos and faced the consequences. The drama ends with an unforgettable scene. OP recounts, D struggled to get up, cursed, "I'm never coming back," then stumbled straight into a trash can and fell over again. OP adds, the customers in the shop roared with laughter, and one of the older gentlemen said, "Well done, kid, you taught him a lesson." I put away my scissors and thought, what a great day. I was just thinking, D, falling twice? That's karma in action. What do you think? Was this the funniest way to kick out a customer? OP writes, after that incident, I told my friends, and everyone agreed D was a legendary drunk. The Reddit comments exploded. Team OP said, D was way too entitled, drunk or not, OP had every right to kick him out. Team D countered, come on, he was just drunk. OP could have let him sit and sober up. Someone even joked, next time, OP should actually shave his head to teach him a lesson. I was laughing so hard but totally on OP's side. D, if you're drunk, go home, don't make a scene. I have a theory for you all to think about. Was D deliberately causing a scene for attention? Maybe he's used to getting his way at bars and thought he could pull the same stunt at a barbershop? Or perhaps he was just an entitled drunk with no self-awareness? Either way, I think OP handled it brilliantly, turning D into a joke before kicking him out. But I do wonder, if D sobered up and came back, would OP cut his hair? Let me add one last update from OP. A week later, a customer told me, I saw that drunk guy sleeping on a park bench. He still looked wasted. OP writes, I laughed, knew he hadn't learned a thing. And I thought, D, if you're sleeping on the streets, don't blame anyone but yourself. So, what do you think? Did OP handle it well, or is D just a pitiful case? Have you ever dealt with a customer like this before? And that's the entitled drama of the day, one drunk guy causing chaos in a barbershop, only to be kicked out and humiliated. Did you side with OP or D? Got any wild customer stories to share? Drop a comment, I'm curious. Story 6, Humorous, my friend's sister declared herself the homeowner. Next, we return to our /entitled people, where sometimes, friends and family bring the most unexpected surprises. This time, OP shares a housing drama that made me want to scream, Lisa, do you think you're the queen? OP is just an ordinary person who recently bought a cozy little house with their best friend, Jay, a place with a brand new beige sofa, a small kitchen with shiny nonstick pans, and a backyard for gardening. OP writes, Jay and I saved for 4 years to get this place, dreaming of peaceful days without interruptions. The main character of this drama? Lisa, Jay's older sister, whom OP describes as tall, blonde-dyed hair, always speaking like she's giving orders, and completely unaware of what no means. OP explains, Lisa used to crash at Jay's place when he was renting, but now that we own our house, I thought she'd finally take care of herself. Last time I told this story, I focused on the tension, but this time, let's turn it into a dark comedy about Lisa's entitlement and how OP and Jay made her a laughingstock before kicking her out. Are you ready? Buckle up, because Lisa doesn't just want to stay, she declares herself the homeowner. OP writes, we were painting the living room when Lisa showed up, suitcase in hand, declaring, nice house, I'll live here with you. OP was stunned, Lisa, this is our house, not a hotel. Lisa grinned, I'm the older sister, I have rights. Give me the master bedroom. OP writes, the master bedroom was mine, I paid for it, it had a new bed and big windows. Jay stepped in, Lisa, we didn't invite you. But Lisa ignored him, dragging her suitcase inside, yelling, so what if I live here? And I just wanted to yell, Lisa, what do you mean, so what? OP writes, the next day, I came home from work to find Lisa sprawled on the couch, feet up on the table, finishing off the pizza I had saved in the fridge. OP asked, Lisa, what are you doing? Lisa shrugged, this is my house too. I was hungry, so I ate. OP writes, that was my dinner, and now there was just an empty box. Lisa wasn't done yet, your bedroom looks nice, let's swap. OP recalls, I looked at her, wearing Jay's pajamas, and I just wanted to throw her suitcase out the door. Jay muttered, "You've lost it." And I was just laughing, thinking, Lisa, do you really believe this is your house? OP writes, "We had a secret meeting, kicking her out outright would cause drama, so why not have some fun first?" OP pretended to agree, "All right, Lisa, you can stay, but you have to do chores." Lisa nodded, "Easy." OP writes, "I handed her a broom and said, 'Sweep the yard, it's full of leaves.' Lisa swept for 5 minutes before yelling, 'I'm not a maid.' Jay added, 'Well, then wipe the stove, it's greasy.' Lisa threw the broom down, 'You're bullying me.' OP writes, "We were laughing so hard while she stormed into her room. And I was just satisfied, Lisa, if you want to stay, do the work." OP writes, "The next day, Lisa threw a party in our house, inviting 3 random friends and blasting music. OP and Jay returned home, saw the place turned into a nightclub, and yelled, 'Everyone, get out.' Lisa snapped, 'This is my house.' OP locked the front door and called the police, 'We have intruders.' The police arrived, and Lisa cried, 'I'm their cousin, they're so cruel.' But OP showed the house deed, and the police dragged Lisa and her friends out. OP writes, watching her storm off, swearing while hauling her suitcase, I just wanted to record it. And I cheered, Lisa, you called yourself the homeowner, now deal with the consequences. OP writes, after that, Jay blocked Lisa, and I still laugh whenever I remember it. Reddit exploded with comments. One side, the OP supporters, said, Lisa was way too entitled. She moved in without permission, she deserved to be kicked out. The other side, the Lisa sympathizers, argued, come on, she just needed a place to stay. OP should have let her crash temporarily. Someone even joked, next time, let Lisa stay in the yard and be the guard dog. I nearly choked from laughing, but I'm Team OP, Lisa, someone else's house is not yours. I have a theory for you all to think about. What if Lisa wasn't just looking for a temporary stay, but actually wanted to claim the house as hers? Maybe she saw the nice place and thought, I'm the big sister, I deserve this. Or maybe Lisa had been spoiled by Jay in the past and assumed he'd let her live there forever. Either way, OP and Jay handled it perfectly, pranking her first, then kicking her out, both hilarious and firm. But I do wonder, if Lisa sincerely apologized, would they let her back in? Oh, and here's an update from OP. A few weeks later, Lisa texted Jay, you were so mean to me, but I forgive you. Let me move back in. Jay didn't respond, while OP said, if she shows up, I'm hiring a security guard. And I just thought, Lisa, forgive what? You did this to yourself. What do you think? Did OP and Jay handle it well, or do you feel bad for Lisa? Have you ever dealt with someone who invited themselves into your home? So, there you have it, another entitled drama that had me both fuming and laughing. A sister who declared herself the homeowner, only to be thrown out like an unwelcome guest, who would have thought? Are you Team OP or Team Lisa? Have any home invasion stories of your own? Drop a comment, I'm dying to hear them. Story 7, Satisfaction, the bully who dug his own grave. Finally, we return to our entitled people, where bullies sometimes turn themselves into a joke without any help, and this time, OP shares a school-to-office drama that made me want to scream, Kay, you did this to yourself. OP is an ordinary person, once the target of bullying in high school, now working as an office employee in a small company, the kind with tidy desks, an old coffee machine, and steady workdays. OP writes, I'm not one for revenge, but sometimes life delivers justice on its own. The main character of this drama is Kay, OP's former bully, who, by chance, now works at the same company. OP shares, back in high school, Kay was the basketball star, tall, good-looking, but he loved bullying me because I was skinny and wore glasses. Last time I told this story with the intensity of IRS trouble and a dramatic firing, but this time, let's turn it into a dark comedy about Kay's entitlement and how he single-handedly ruined himself without OP even lifting a finger. Ready? Buckle up, because Kay didn't just bully OP, he dug his own grave in the most spectacular way. To understand how bad Kay was, let's rewind. OP recalls, back in 10th grade, Kay poured milk on my head in front of the whole class, laughing, "You look like a wet dog." I was humiliated but didn't dare fight back. OP continues, "He tore up my homework, called me a nerd, and no one stood up for me because K was too popular. OP endured it until graduation, thinking, finally, I'm free." But life had other plans. 8 years later, K showed up at OP's company, joining the same team. OP shares, "He didn't recognize me, but he was still the same old bully, mocking coworkers, stealing ideas. And I couldn't help but think, K, how are you still this dumb as an adult?" The trouble escalated when K targeted OP at work. OP recalls, "One day in a team meeting, K pointed at me in front of everyone and said, 'Look at this guy.' He was a scared little rabbit in high school, probably still useless now." OP writes, "The whole team laughed, and I turned red, but I stayed quiet. I knew K would destroy himself soon." And boy, was OP right. Because K wasn't just an office bully, he was also incredibly stupid. K openly bragged, "I've been dodging taxes for a year, and the IRS hasn't caught me. You guys should try it." OP shares, "He literally shouted this in the office, coffee cup in hand, like he was performing on stage. And I just thought, K, you absolute moron." OP patiently observed, waiting for fate to take its course. I didn't record anything like I did in the last story, but I noticed K loved showing off online, posting pictures of cash with captions like, "Dodging taxes is easy." Then, the final blow. K got drunk during a lunch break, filmed himself at his desk saying, "I'm the king of tax evasion. The IRS is dumb," and posted it publicly. OP writes, "I saw it and just laughed. He exposed himself." Unfortunately for K, the company boss saw it too. OP shares, "The manager called K into a private meeting. When he came out, his face was pale. He was fired for damaging the company's reputation. And I cheered, 'K, you dug your own grave and fell right in.' After getting fired, K texted OP, 'You snitched to the boss, didn't you? I'll get my revenge.' OP replied, 'No, K, you literally posted the video yourself.' But that wasn't even the worst part. OP writes, "Turns out, the IRS saw the video too. They started investigating him, and a mutual friend later told me K went into hiding." Meanwhile, OP was getting praised for being a hard-working employee, while K became the office joke. OP shares, "Watching him self-destruct was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I clapped, 'K, you bully people? Now you're the clown of the office.'" After OP shared their story, the Reddit comments went wild. Team OP, K was way too entitled. He ruined himself, OP won without even doing anything. Team K, come on, he was just bragging. OP should have warned him. The jokers, next time, OP should grab some popcorn and enjoy the show. I laughed reading it, but I'm definitely on OP's side. K, you did this to yourself, don't blame anyone else. Here's a theory for you, did K actually think he could get away with it? Maybe he was so used to being a bully that he assumed bragging about tax fraud would get him admiration, not consequences. Or maybe he was just too drunk to realize what he was doing. Either way, OP's strategy was genius, no need for revenge, just let K self-destruct. But I do wonder, if K ever apologized, would OP forgive him? Oh, and one last update from OP, a few months later, a mutual friend told me K got fined and now works as a janitor. He still complains about me. OP writes, I laughed. I knew he wouldn't learn anything. And I thought, K, you went from king of tax evasion to cleaning floors. That's on you. So, there you have it, a self-entitled bully who dug his own grave, went from boasting to being fired, and got exactly what he deserved. Did OP play it smart, or do you think K deserves sympathy? Ever seen a bully destroy themselves like this? Drop a comment, I'm curious. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you've already hit the like button, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so to make sure you don't miss out on more crazy stories. If you missed the last episode on the channel, it was all about malicious compliance, where some bad bosses got completely wrecked. Be sure to check it out if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next episode. We love you all.